Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the next podcast of The Monk and the Mechanic. I'm Kylie, the monk.
And I'm Josh, the mechanic.
And we have our guest today is Nicole Sakach. She is a UFO, researcher, and we're going to let her tell us a little bit about herself. We are super happy. We had a mutual friend on, William Pullen. He is actually a UFO historian, so I thought that was interesting. That was something I had never heard of before until we had William on the show. And so we're super excited to touch base with Nicole. And so without any further ado, let's let Nicole, hi, welcome to the show.
Hi, gentlemen. Glad to be here. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
So
it's a pleasure talking.
Absolutely. So you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into UFO research and anything else you want to discuss?
Well, I have been researching the UFO topic, problem, issue. There's lots of words we can put in there for close to 25 years now. That has been off and on. So many of us in this field have our day jobs or our real jobs, as we like to call them. But this UFO hobby of ours becomes a full-time job, if you want to know the truth. That's how much time you devote to it. That's how much passion you have for it. And that's what you put into it. But I kind of like to start my story with the UFO sighting I had when I was 15 years old. What I have learned over the 25 years that I've been looking into it is it was actually nothing special. What I experienced and what I saw was a green fireball, is how I like to put it. Lots of people call them orbs. But as I said before, it was nothing special. The more I've researched, there are so many hundreds, if not thousands of people that have had almost the exact same sighting scenario as I have. So the hunt was on from that point in time. You know, I dove into everything UFO that I could get my hands on. At first, that was not a lot. My local library didn't even have one UFO book. My school library had one at their elementary school, which I thought was interesting, but nothing at my high school library. But by the time I got to college, that was a different playing field. You know, college libraries in cities, it was just a mass of information. And that's where I started. Of course, you come across Stanton Friedman. He's an excellent researcher. He brings a lot of science into ufology, which, as a person who is new to the woo side of ufology, I've kind of always stuck to the nuts and bolts. Like, what is this? What did I see? What are other people seeing? There's evidence. We can collect this, whether it's testimony, field investigations that produce lab testable things like burn marks on trees, radiation traces in the ground, imprints, things like that. You know, all of those things are tangible, and they're also something you can chase down, you know, whether it's through military interactions, mass sightings with multiple witnesses, all these things, they add to the hunt.
So, Nicole, what was this green fireball? Can you get into a little bit more detail about that experience? Because it must have been impactful for it to send you on this journey. And although you say that it was nothing special, you know, what was that experience like? What did you see? And why is it nothing special? And why did it send you down this path?
Well,
why, Nicole? Why?
Why? Well, let me backtrack a little bit. Yes, it was very personally special for me, and it did ignite my quest. I don't want to take away from the shock and awe of having an experience like this, because it is life-changing. It does change the way you think about the world, the universe, us, and everything. Why I said it's not special is because after 25 years of looking into these things and sharing such a similar experience, it gives you comfort to know that you're not the only one who has experienced these things. And then you realize that so many more people have had it as well. But I guess to start with, my sighting it was around 9 o'clock at night, and myself and two other friends had just left our local movie theater, and we were going to go meet up with some of our friends that were having a bonfire party outside of town. Standard weekend night fun for teenagers around here. And we were goofing around a little bit. We liked to do this thing where we would pop up through the sunroof or the moonroof in our cars and kind of cruise out to the party and just be silly, howl at the moon, that kind of teenager stuff. Well, we were about a mile outside of town, and I was going to pop up through the sunroof. And as soon as I did, about 2 miles ahead of us was a tree line. And as soon as I looked forward, just right above the tree line was this green, fiery ball. And it wasn't solid green. And I compare the color to digital, like on a digital clock face. It was that color of digital green. And it was luminescent, but it wasn't like igniting the entire sky or even the trees below it. They were still shadowed. But I saw this fireball right above the tree line. And almost as soon as I saw it, it darted about a mile south and sort of appeared to get smaller. And I'm not sure, it might have been going more like west away from me and south. But as soon as I could even process that, it had come back to its original position, had gone up further in the air, and then it came back right over our car. And this all happened, I would say, within 2 or 3 seconds. It seemed so fast. When it started coming toward us is when I said, "Are you guys seeing this?" And I was pointing and falling back into the car at the same time. And they, of course, were like, "Seeing what?" And it was gone.
That's amazing.
So,
and did everyone else see it? Did they tell you what they saw? Did they see the same thing you did?
My friend, my girlfriend that was there, she had said she saw light. The driver, my guy friend that was with us, he was just like, "What? I didn't see anything. What are you guys talking about?" Well, we continued on our way. We got to our party and nobody was there. And we hung out for a while. This was before cell phones, guys. So we hung out a while. We were like, "Oh, somebody went on a beer run. We're underage. Somebody went to go get some beer." Waited a while longer. Nobody came back. And that's when we realized it was 11 o'clock at night. And we were about to be late. Well, my other friend that was with us, she was already past the curfew. She was late. We were all in trouble. We beat feet home, At that point, I told my mom. My dad wasn't at home. He was working. But I told my mom, and I think she just kind of thought it was baloney, we were late, it was whatever. Of course, it was, "Have you guys been drinking?" Anything like that. And I even told her about it the next day, and I think her reaction was, "Oh, my friend Donna said she saw a UFO once." Just kind of blew it off, and we never really talked about it again. I was kind of in trouble for being home late. I was grounded. My other two friends were in trouble too. We kind of played this avoid each other at school game for the next couple days. And that's when I had talked to my friends again. And my girlfriend had said, yes, she saw the light. She believed me. She saw a green light. And my other friend, he was still like, no, I don't remember seeing anything. I know you saw something. I believe that you saw something. He's like, something scared you. You fell back into the car. And then we just kind of never talked about it again. And we were close friends to that point, but then we kind of drifted off from that. And that's another part that over the years, that's kind of par for the course with these scenarios. It's the event, the sightings, the high strangeness around it, how it changes your interactions with your friends. Those are all similar things shared by people having this experience. And that's what I mean. My experience wasn't anything unique or special or I don't want to say out of this world. But yeah, I mean, and I found comfort in that, just knowing that, like I said, hundreds, if not thousands of people have had almost the exact scenario happen to them as well.
So so two things with that is I have a fireball experience that I saw. It actually looked like fire though, and it was falling through the sky very slowly. My older brother was with me, and he had no memory of it. And I tracked down the other guy that was with me that night, and he has no memory of it. So bizarre, because we were literally sitting there watching it and talking about it, and a fireman came up who was volunteer fire department. We asked him. He had his radio, and he was communicating with the police and the other firefighters about what we were seeing. I contacted that guy, and he has no memory of it.
Wow.
And so, so what you were saying was there was missing time, and and what do you make of that?
Well, my scientific, rational, brain-sided part of me wants to say we were teenagers dicking around and we didn't have the time right. But I also know that from leaving the movie theater to 11 o'clock at night, we did not screw around that much. I mean, we were talking about maybe 4 or 5 miles outside of city limits into the country. That's not hours worth of, I mean, we could zigzag every country road between there and it still wouldn't take 2 hours. So is it a full 2 hours of missing time? That's something I don't know. I would put it more closer to maybe an hour or maybe 45 minutes even. The other thing that people usually ask when they talk about missing time is abduction. I've had people out of left field. Well, it seems like left field to me. Like the moment I tell that part of my story, they automatically jump. You've been abducted. I think Dave Scott, and even though we're pals, I'll rib on him a little bit. He immediately said, we've got aliens. And that's something that has always kind of made me uncomfortable. I am trying to feel my way through it a little bit more and dive into it. But I never felt like I was taken anywhere. I never felt like I left. I did feel paused, and others that have experienced have kind of said the same thing. It was more of a pause than anything stopping. And it was that flyover moment. And I have never had regression therapy or hypnosis or anything like that, but it's almost like, as I remember, like I said, I felt scared and came back down through the window. And in that, it was that moment where I felt the pause. And it's almost like, did I come back in the window or was I falling back through the window? it's hard to explain. It's part of the high strangeness, but
Now, are there any military installations nearby where you guys were at?
well, is in the area. I can't say it's close. It's within an hour. We do see fighter jets that fly over. I remember a big part of our high school or my elementary school experience where for some reason jets were doing sonic booms over our area. It's like anytime we heard them coming, it's like the whole playground would be like, is it gonna boom? Like things like that. And I do have some military friends, and my uncle is a longtime mayor in the area. And I say long time, like long time, maybe the longest running mayor in Illinois. But he's a military man as well. And I think it was before I graduated high school. So I was probably 16 or 17. I told my experience to my uncle, and that's one of the first things we did is we called Scott Air Force Base and, tried to track things down. And they weren't, you hear these rumors, it's, oh, military, they're so secretive, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it was truly, they were helpful. I felt like they were helpful. I didn't think they were trying to deceive us or withhold information in any way possible. They told us the flights they had, or they told us the things they had in the air that day and that night and scheduled for the following morning. So
Yeah,
the only
I always hear that about the military bases and how they're not, forthcoming. I would say what seems to me, and you might have experienced differently, is the closest to the real story comes out first, and then there's a redaction, and maybe they come up with a story later. But the initial story is usually, because those are the people that are there every day. They're like, it's not that big of a deal unless you work in Area 51. It's not a top secret installation. If they're flying jets over your house. I used to be in aviation in the Navy, and we used to get calls all the time from people complaining, and are those your jets? And you would tell them, yeah, we were over there or whatever. Because again, not top secret, doing some sort of training. It's not a big deal, but
no, it was very helpful. And over the years, I have my rational brain wants a military explanation. I was all like excited when I first heard about these stealth helicopters. I was like, that's it. That's going to be what I saw. They must light up green from the inside when they're running quiet. It was like any tangible excuse or reason I could give myself, I want it. That's the one I want. There's a big part of me that doesn't want it to be more than that. Although when I talk with my experiencer hat on, that's exactly what I feel. I know I hate falling behind that phrase, I know what I saw. Because I do know what I saw, but I don't. And that's not good enough for me. It's never been good enough for me. If I don't know what I saw and if there's more to it, then I need to find it. And that is kind of where my research after this long has led me. I am finally starting to go to the other side, more so from the nuts and bolts into, we call it the woo now. I don't know where the woo came from, if it was Mr. Grant Cameron or Mr. Dave Scott or just an evolution into pop culture words with it. But I guess I'm starting to dive into the high strangeness, the contactee side of this research. And it's big. It's big and the waters are turbulent.
So
But
I had a question. So talking about this, even your own personal sort of wanting to find a rational explanation for it. Obviously being an ex-Navy aviation person, the two videos that the Navy released, I think it was like 2005 and 2011 or 12, where they were following
Where it has it on the crosshairs?
Yeah, they
On
weren't. They were following with FLIR, and I actually used to work on F-18, so I'm very familiar with all the systems and everything behind it. And they don't call them UFOs anymore. Now it's unexplained aerial phenomenon. But so here is this very viable. It's not the only one out there, but these are very viable, very reliable video from weapon systems that has been released. There's essentially no denying it, and even people in the State Department have said this is a valid video that was released. This is real footage from a FLIR and a Navy F-18. All of and it makes us think that maybe we're not alone, but that's not a headline. It's not something that everybody's going, oh my gosh, here's some, everybody's very trusting of, these things that come out in the news that the government's doing or the military's doing. So here you have some very viable proof, and it's mixed in amongst the, dog that likes to water ski.
It is exciting. And these videos have given, us a chance to interact with people outside of ufology. Maybe the 100 people that saw it blurb on the real news before it got buried with the dog videos and stuff. But I don't know. I think it's a good platform to open up this discussion to everybody. I mean, that was one of the first things I did is I walked into work and I was like, who saw that the Navy just admitted there's UAPs? Like, and then of course everybody just starts chattering. But then, like you said, it kind of went away. I think everybody's waiting for more at this point because yes, the Navy, the government admitted these aren't faked videos. They are real footage. We cannot identify them. There's still people out there that are saying this is still somebody else's secret tech. That's a theory. It could be, but wow, they've really got a jump on us. They really have kept this secret for a long time. There's also the vein of people thinking that this is a privatized company tech, that it's not another government's tech, which, that flies off into the world of mad scientists. And just when you think stuff like that doesn't happen, then you hear about that flat earther sending himself up in a rocket and exploding. So, I mean, is there a secret mad scientist out there with high tech? I doubt it, because he would still have to get his parts from somewhere. We could still maybe find out that he's doing something and building something somewhere, especially of that magnitude. And we're not talking about one thing. The Nimitz videos did not capture. They captured one item or one object very clear, but when you listen to the videos, there was more. There was 9 more maybe. It was a fleet of ships. It was not one. So there you go. And that goes in hand with where's the rest of the footage? Why isn't there more footage? They're withholding. But like you said, you've worked with this technology. You know how hard it is and not every fighter jet has this camera. Am I correct on that? Maybe not everyone is equipped with it.
No, that's actually a pod you have to install on the airplane. So yeah.
Right. Probably a very massively expensive pod. And I am not a military person, but when you listen to this video, this thing apparently was very, very hard to get into the crosshairs to be able to record it. So we always talk about, the day of technology and, we're all going to pull out our phones and we're going to snap the perfect clear picture. It's hard to get the perfect picture with the most advanced camera on the planet flying around. So I don't know.
I think
it's all fascinating.
That one hit me because, like you said, I heard people say, "Why didn't you get them all?" So how that works is the pilot on his throttle has like a little, almost like a, it's not a dial, it's almost like a little mouse roller, and that's all he
Mhm.
has to control that camera. Now he's also flying the airplane. He's also paying attention to everything else that's going on. And what he did was he selected it to track a single target, and it's designed to do that. It's not designed to track 9 or 10 or 12 targets, and if they're moving around, it's impossible for him to do that. So they or he, I don't, there's a couple videos and a couple different airplanes were doing the best they could trying to track just that one target. And that's what hit me is, I'm very familiar with that system, with that airplane, with their procedures. And that, when I saw that, I freaked out. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up because I recognize all of that stuff, and I recognize what's going on, and the situation that they're in. And that's why I thought, well, this is it. Here we go. This is where they say there's somebody here, and they kind of did. And then it was, like we said before. And I feel like there's a large part of the ufology that's in denial. There's people that are interested, but then most people, if you were to say, look, here's the proof, but nobody's come down and shook our hand yet, they go, yeah, when they shake my hand, then I'll believe it. And then they shake their hand and they go, well, that could be a video. You see all this stuff that they do on the computers these days and with phones, and they make everybody look like bears or other people, or maybe it's something like that. So there's always going to be this sort of deniability, almost to the point where it wouldn't matter. And which might be why they haven't landed and said hello.
Well, so that's two things that I think about sometimes is that there's a real stigma around believing in UFOs, right? They've really put the hammer down on us over all the years that you say that you saw something, and they're like, well, what were you drinking that night, or what were you doing that night, or you know what I mean? So, and it's almost like a knee-jerk reaction because there's something ingrained in either, people have been so made fun of that they don't want to be a part of it. They don't even want to hear your whole story. They just want to, just wave it off as you were drinking that night or something like that. So I encounter that. And then also, I think some of this is, too big for the human brain to wrap itself around, right? And so while we can sit there and you actually have, worked on those jets and about these pods, so to you, you're like, holy shit, like this is for real. But still, for some reason, especially to me, who's not familiar with that technology, it still doesn't completely register. I still can't wrap my brain around it. It's still kind of like too big for my brain to comprehend. And I'm kind of an amateur, researcher in this field. To your normal person on the street, they may be seeing things all the time, but their brain is not going to register it. And then if they do see something, they quickly wave it off as something else, And so getting it down to the core of our belief system and trying to understand it and analyze what it actually is, there's some barriers there to processing this information. Do you find that? And like you said earlier, Nicole, you said that you actually want closure. Like if you would have found out that green fireball was actually a flare or something, you would actually be happy because that's closure for you. It's the fact that you don't have closure that keeps you on this trail, right?
Yes, correct. That has kept me on the trail. And you guys just brought up two interesting points. The general public, like you said, we say UAP, UFO. What we've seen is unidentified. They still need more tangible proof than our saying. And I agree with that. I agree with the skeptics. I want everybody to be skeptical about this because it is still such a giant unknown. But everybody immediately associates UFO with alien. That isn't necessarily the case. That's what we want it to be. It truly is unidentified. It doesn't, even the ones that are that are verified unknown, we don't know if there's an alien being, an actual person thing inside of what we're seeing in the sky. Even the Nimitz videos. Yes, we are coming to the conclusion that these things are intelligently controlled, but that opens up a whole new avenue. You know, are they drones? Are you know, alien drones? I'll say alien, because we're superimposing that if it's not us, it's alien. So the Navy has said it's not us. It's not ours, us, at least, or theirs, ours, us. It could be a secret us, but, and that's what I find fascinating. It extends ufology out of the nuts and bolts, out of just the extraterrestrial theory, which is what a lot of people follow, which is what I followed for 25 years. And now it opens us up into the world of what I've always called what Jacques Vallée calls it, the multi-dimensional visitor hypothesis. And that's even been expanded upon in these last few, I would say maybe a decade or more, into the ultra-terrestrial, into the contactee realm of ufology, outside of just the witnessing stuff in the skies or the abduction encounters that you hear about, the continual experience of maybe somebody had a UFO sighting, but they've also encountered high strangeness throughout their entire life. And they're considering that high strangeness continuous contact from not yourself. Is it alien? Is it your consciousness? Is it a collective contact through consciousness? These are all giant unknowns, and these aspects are where we truly do not have the science to back up what experiencers are going through, or how to document it, or how to even track it down. We can verify that somebody isn't mentally ill. You know, we can verify a person's character to an extent to make sure they're not a known fraudster or a liar, or, you know, these themes that go through people's lives when they are like that. But this is also the fascinating world that I've dove into here recently within the last year of my research. It's the world of synchronicities and experiencers coming together. And I don't know if we're really moving the entire field of ufology forward, but to me, you can track down as many sighting reports and collect all the data you want, and you can have the most supreme witnesses like these Navy guys with the Nimitz encounters, or even Jim Peniston with the excellent way that he was able to go to his training and document his encounter. You know, the average person isn't considered that. You know, the average person is like me. They don't have a degree, maybe. They are intelligent. I'm not going to say everybody without a piece of college paper isn't smart, because they are. But yeah, they're not trained like even police are to be observers. You know, I'm really interested in the common person's experience and how they're interacting with this and how we're interacting with each other. I mean, over the last year, it might be longer, I know Grant Cameron has been really talking about consciousness and how this ET experience goes way beyond the nuts and bolts, which I started paying attention to that because he has always tracked down the nuts and bolts. And he has a book coming out, and it's called, I'm not sure of the exact title, but it's about contact modalities and all these different ways that we are being contacted. And he's amassing quite a group of experiencers, whether they're UFO experiencers, people in contact with different star collectives, mediums in the paranormal side, clairvoyant.
Let me ask you about that. So let's go to the woo-woo for a little bit. I'm so woo. I'm so woo. I even like the Wu-Tang Clan.
Don't we all?
So, like I say in the beginning, the monk and the mechanic, right? So I come from woo-woo
Yes.
somewhat, and he's the mechanic aspect of this dynamic duo. So, but even for me, like even driving here today, I was thinking about experiences I've had with angels, and these angels were in human form. In other words, one time when I was 18, I was hiking down this lonely road by myself, and out of nowhere, this truck pulls up, and this guy picks me up. And he was going the opposite direction. He turned around and took me where I needed to go, miles and miles and miles out of his way. And he told me he worked in the oil field. And I said, yeah, but you're going the other way. He goes, I don't care, man. I got all night to drive. And so he drove me all the way to where I was going to drop me off, and then got back on the road, and I guess went to where he was going. But why did that guy do that? Why? What made him pull over? What made him go out of his way to backtrack where he had already come from? And I have several instances of angels appearing in my life like that to save me from even, things I don't even know what might have happened to me in those times. So, and then looking into Buddhism and other esoteric kind of things, I'm definitely a believer, but this is where I need some clarification. And maybe you can, define some of these things that people are talking about now with the UFO philosophy and multidimensional beings and things like that. So even though I am a believer, when I turn on a video and some lady is saying that the Palladians are speaking through her to me, and then it sounds very much like law of attraction or positive thinking, I'm thinking,
Right.
I really want to believe you, but at the same time, it kind of sounds like pop psychology. It's stuff that we already know. This is law of attraction stuff. I think if the Palladians were actually trying to tell us something, why ain't they figuring out how to clean the earth and fix our water problem and stop the coronavirus from spreading and feed the hungry? Why are they telling me that if I visualize my goals, they'll manifest in my life? Why aren't the Palladians telling me that? You know what I mean? So I try to
Well,
believe, but
I have.
do you want to tell us some of the common themes? You've mentioned a couple of people like Jacques Vallée, and then you mentioned a couple of other names that are people that are becoming experts in these fields. What are like the things that they're talking about? So you mentioned multidimensional beings. You talked about the crafts aren't being driven by actual entities. They may be some type of drones. You've talked about other realities somewhat. Are these common themes that are coming out now?
I don't think they're just coming out. They've probably been emerging since the 60s and 70s. I'm trying to think of the year. See, this is where my partner's great, William Poland. He can give you a book, the year it was written, in like a timeline. I need my notes for that, but I think it was in the late 70s when Jacques Vallée and Dr. Alan Hynek were collaborating with each other, and they had put out a few books, and then Jacques Vallée had really split. I don't want to say split. That like implies there was bad blood. I don't think it was anything like that big of a disagreement. I just think Mr. Vallée was probably more public about it at the time, what he was thinking and where his research was taking him. And what he was finding was similarities in folklore and the UFO experience. And he put out a book, I believe it was called From Folklore to UFOs, or Folklore to Flying Saucers, I believe. And then Passport to Magonia. And then he has his whole Forbidden Science series. I think there might be 5 volumes of that right now, which are interesting because they're kind of his journals from the last few decades, and him finally talking about little projects that he's worked on for the government and with other scientists that he's collaborated with. But he kind of started this whole it's bigger than ETs or aliens, in my opinion. He did. And going back over modern times, the past couple hundred years, and culturally, our folklore, what we're describing, even encounters like fairies, it's just how these things are interpreted in the culture you're living in. But when the bare bones are stripped, you find these similarities. And a few researchers now are doing the same. I know Mr. Cameron has mentioned finding stories in ufology that are maybe dream related, and people are talking about this dream or abduction scenarios, where he's also finding these similarities in psychics and mediums, and they're describing the same things in their dreams when they're contacted, whether it's, they're channeling and they're receiving a message. Like, the message is often the same. And you brought up the Pleiadians and how it seems very crazy to see someone channel and have messages or give messages. It took me aback at first. I was like, whoa, what's going on here? The only thing I could equate it to in my life is if you've ever attended a Christian church that believes in speaking in tongues. And that's amazing to witness as part of a guest to the congregation. And that's almost the same feeling I have about any star organization, collective, channeling. I don't dismiss it. I can't dismiss it. It's something that's obviously happening with somebody. And I try to dismiss all the weird feelings I have about it. And when it comes down to it, these messages are about love and coming together and this oneness. And it would be great if right now we would get a message of, hey, here's the coronavirus cure, or here's how you end hunger, but that's heavy. Why would we ever expect somebody to save us? That's one thing that I have felt at the core of my experience and contact is this is within me. Nobody's going to save you. Nobody's going to help you. You have to help yourself, whether it's the monk, whether it's you, meditating and speaking to your higher self and going through those life lessons that you repeat and repeat and repeat. And then finally you break it, and then you're above, you move on. I think that's what these collectives are contacting. That's the message that they're giving. It's, you have the power to help yourself. It's through love, and it's through collaboration and unity with your fellow man. And in the end, does that sound crazy? Does that sound out there? No, it doesn't. Or it doesn't to me. It sounds like an invitation. It sounds like put away your childish things. It sounds like they speak that we're in a transition period and that they're here to help us transition. That means they'll be there after the transition. So we have to push ourselves through that, I think, and yeah, that brings a lot of things to the table. That means we've got to get science to collaborate more. We have to know what to do with these experiences that we are having. I think the biggest thing is we have to keep talking about it. We cannot go underground with this. Like the Nimitz videos have already gone off, the big screen, and they're buried in with the cat and dog videos now. We need to take what the Navy gave us, and that was validation. And we need to keep coming forward and talking with each other and talking with people outside of ufology. These are us talking is what is going to keep the synchronicities happening. And it's gonna, here, I'll talk like a real experiencer. It's going to continue an awakening. And that awakening will bring in the people that blow off the videos that go, I need more tangible proof. My friend Peter Robbins, I read just the other day, which he has worked with the late Bud Hopkins with abductees and contactees for many decades. And he said he believes that every person knows somebody else who has had experiences like these. So, but we don't talk about it. Like, I didn't even talk about it with my family and still don't talk about it with my family. But if you have these experiences, more than likely your family is experiencing them too. So how do you go to your parents and say, hey, you've been having crazy dreams? Do you wake up and there's a light? And it's awkward. Families don't talk about this, but I am. And I know my aunt has had similar dreams that I have had, and I'll continue to talk to her about it. And my biggest motivator is, if this is happening to me, it's happening to my son. And if it's happening to my son, then I'm going to figure it out so he's not afraid of it. So I'm not afraid of it. This is the way to level it up. And it's all for the next generation or our children or for the betterment of humanity. It's not just, I have this contact, it's solely for me, I'm so special. It's not that. It's once you realize it and kind of surrender to it, it's the oneness. It's nothing is about just yourself anymore. It's about everybody. So we can do it together.
I've never really heard or put that together with the spiritualism and ufology together, but that makes complete and total sense to me, because once you accept the fact that there is something else out there, now instead of you just being a citizen of the world, you open that door to become a citizen of the universe. And,
right.
Or at least the galaxy. So, and that makes perfect sense. And the fact that we don't know how to get from here to our closest star neighbor in a lifetime obviously says that we don't understand how somebody else would come here or send a probe here or whatever the case might be. That is beyond our understanding. So that in itself should lead to not dismissing it.
Right.
We're all guilty of dismissing things or saying, oh, this person's not driving right or not walking in front of me right or whatever the case may be. It's hard when it comes, for me personally, when it comes to people like the flat earth theories and all that, simply because we feel like we've been to space. Look, it's a ball. We've seen it, but again, maybe their universe, it is flat. It's hard to deny. it's hard to deny people when, you know, they believe in something. But going on that, if we did receive a signal, and, you know, I'm sure you've heard of the 1977 radio signal.
The ROC.
Yeah. There was a
Yeah.
message of peace and love, and everybody went, oh, it was a hoax. Well, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but it was a good message. It was a pleasant thing to hear. And why be so quick to dismiss it?
I don't know if it really is dismissive. I think, well, you look at our world religions, you look at being Jewish or being Christian or being Muslim. Jesus was all about love. It is about love, and it is about oneness. And if you look at these themes in religion and other spiritualities and ufology, the messages that contactees receive, it's about love. It's about coming together. And I know we all want it to be the government, you know, that kind of holds our hand and says, this is okay, you know, but often if you look throughout history, the government is the last to the table. You know, it's always a people's movement that changes, and then government catches up. So, I mean, we live in a wonderful country where we get to vote, and we think our ideas just push forward that way. But, you know, our ideas that we vote on now, they started 30, 40, 50 years ago. And that's how things see the light of day. And that's how I think ufology and this push forward, that's how I think it's going to see the light of day. There's just too many people having these experiences. And now we are kind of all connected in a world community. The internet did that. Is it perfect yet? Can we all Facebook like we Facebook in China? No, I think they still restrict things, but travel's still there. Word of mouth travels faster still than it ever has before on this planet. You know, I think it amazes me that I can talk to an experiencer in Australia. I can talk to an experiencer in Africa. I can talk to one in Japan and one in the United States. And we're all having similar things happen. That, to me, is what's special, not whatever the government's gonna do or not gonna do. So
I think that brings up an important point, and that is, so when I was talking about somebody, you know, that was channeling the Palladians, I hope I didn't use the word crazy, because I usually don't use that term. What I'm saying is, I'm not sure if I believe that, you know, this person might be channeling her higher self or source energy or oneness and calling it the Palladians or something like that. Because things that I run into in myself is that without that collaboration with other things, I can start taking these weird roads if I'm by myself. Like you say, you're getting confirmation from people all over the world that are having similar experiences to you. That's one thing. Mm-hmm. When it's something that is happening to other people and you have that confirmation, you're pinging off of these people that are having these same experiences, that's one thing. But I have... So let's as far as trusting my own mind, I always have to step back and really look at something for a long time before I believe it. And I'll tell you why. Is because, let's just take for instance, I randomly started getting this magazine in the mail that was about the end of the world, prophecy, and Christianity, right? And it came from this little church and, you know, whatever, and so I started reading these articles just for fun about Christ is about to come back, the end of the world. These are all the signs and stuff. So the first couple of magazines I read were just fun. And then I started seeing those things everywhere. So suddenly it became part of my mindset. And when I would see something on TV, I would think, I just read an article about that. Oh my God, that was in that magazine about the end of the world. You know what I'm saying? So I have to really be careful about jumping in with both feet until I understand that. No, I have to do a reality check with Josh and say, hey, Josh, I'm thinking about this thing. Does this make sense to you? And if he says, no, Kylie, I totally get that. I feel the same way, or I've heard that, or yeah, there's a whole book about that. I'm like, oh, God, okay, thanks. Oh, okay. Because I thought I was running down my own goat trail by myself. You know what I mean? So I think that's an important point that you made about being able to ping off of other people and find out that it's actually a universal experience, not just my own.
Exactly. I was such an introvert with my ufology for so long. And, it truly is a lonely business when you make it so. And it wasn't until I really stepped out into a public forum on social media and started collaborating with others that, your mind really does open up to more possibilities. Like I had mentioned, I wanted that nuts and bolts answer. I tracked it, traced it, tried to find it for years. I still want it. I still would just love to find out exactly what I saw. But at this point, it's not about what I saw. It's about what I experience. And it's really hard to kind of swallow your pride, or maybe admit that your mind wasn't open enough, because we all like to think, we have our stuff together and we're enlightened and we know what we should do in life. We make decisions and we live with them. But things started pinging for me. Like you said, you read one thing and you might not buy into the entire scenario, but one thing spoke to you. And that was kind of how it started for me. I had lived with that pause, the pause that I experienced in my sighting. And then I started hearing other people's stories, when they talk about continuous contact, and that they always have contact or can meditate and get to a contact point. Well, that triggered me. Meditation. I have meditated and practiced yoga for close to 30 years now. The dreams, the shared dream, reoccurring dream experience started jumping up for me. I'm like, okay, I've had reoccurring dreams. I've had 2 for the span of my life. Another contact modality that synced with me was an out-of-body experience, which I experienced when I was 25 years old. And how you feel in the dream and how I felt in the out-of-body experience and how I felt in the pause, that was all the same feeling for me when I meditated on that and really asked those inner questions about it. And that's when it's like a wave of, I don't want to say it's exactly like what Pleiadian channelers are saying, but it's that oneness. I experienced that with my out of body experience. I was over myself, looking at myself. And what I now know is these points of dark that I had in this experience. People call that your third eye opening and closing. And I was above myself and I knew I was going back into my body. It was just there. As soon as I saw myself, I was like, I'm going back there. And I could feel everything. And it was overwhelming. And this is where I get lost with people saying beings, or, they've encountered something specific. Mine hasn't been specific like that. It is this connection to everything. Like, I've heard other experiencers talk about this wave of empathy that they have. I experienced that, not to the point where I can't squish a bug or not break a blade of grass, But I think Chris Bledsoe is a experiencer right now who is finally coming out and telling his story. And you made me think of it because he calls his contact angels. He believes they're angels, and he has some amazing experiences that are continuing and happen to other people that visit where he lives. And pay attention to his story. Like, you don't have to have an experience, and that doesn't have to make you believe that it's ufology related or that it's aliens. These synchronicities with experiencers are subjective. If it's an alien to me, it's an angel to Chris Bledsoe, and it's somebody else's higher self, but it's the same contact. It's the same oneness. The message is there. And yeah, I'll pause. I can't continue. I get lost.
Okay.
Well,
it's good.
I don't have I'm not a preacher or a minister.
No, good stuff.
I back when I start spewing, I guess, because I still have a big skeptical side myself. I'm still finding my way through these experiences. And I do know that I'm supposed to be talking about them. So I will keep talking about it. I just sometimes lose the words for what I'm trying to describe, as we often do.
Well, yeah, even they say that Buddha's tongue was too weak to actually talk about his experience. Even the Buddha himself couldn't actually put in words what the enlightenment experience was, So we're trying to, capture the whole universe in syllables and grunts and groans. It's impossible.
Well, when I feel lost with my train of thought, like I just did, that's when I try to kick it back into some familiar science or something that's going to ground me. Like you said, Monk, you have your mechanic. I have my William Poland.
So
I have the UFO historian.
So let me throw you a curveball then, because unbeknownst to you, I talked to William Poland before we had this interview, and so I'm gonna throw you a little curveball. Our mutual friend William Poland said, "Ask her about the Rendlesham Forest case."
Rendlesham Forest?
Yes. He said, make sure you ask her about that. Do you have some connection to that?
No, not with the actual event.
No? But are you interested in it?
It has been my case. It's been the one that has poked me over the years, hey, you haven't thought about UFOs for a long time. Boom, enter Rendlesham Forest again.
I know nothing about it.
Well, they call it Europe's Roswell. It's that big of an event. It happened on a twin base site in the UK. It's actually US bases in the UK. And the events unfolded. It's such a huge story. I don't even know where to start, but the events unfolded over a few days. It was a multi-witness site. This is the one I prefaced earlier in our discussion where I said Jim Penniston was such an excellent observer. They had a craft land outside of these Air Force bases in the woods. It was witnessed. To make a long story short, they went out and investigated it. Jim Penniston was able to walk completely around the craft. He was able to draw pictures of it. He was radioing in while he was doing all of this, although he could not hear anything back on the radio. Jim Penniston, some of his previous or his current and previous work at that time was with downed aircraft and safety crew and security crew. Like, he thought he was walking in the forest to find a downed aircraft, and he did not. He found what he calls a craft of unknown origin. And he doesn't believe it was occupied. There were glyphs on it, pictures that he couldn't identify and that he's still trying to identify. Well, the story goes he touched the craft and was downloaded with a binary code that he wrote down. In his experience, he wrote down the code within 24 hours. I think it was within 12 hours. It was a compulsion. He had to write it down. And this code has led to various power source sites around the world. The pyramid at Giza is one of them. Sedona, Arizona has one. There's one in the Greek Isles, High Brazil off of England, Scotland. All very interesting sites, but why, we don't know. There's more to the message we don't know. He's got another book coming out that will talk all about his code. But Rendlesham Forest is special to me personally because the event happened almost 100 days after I was born. I think it's 99 days. I've kind of grown up with this case. I remember it was on Unsolved Mysteries back in the late 80s, and I was like, oh, that case. But also, like I said, I saw a green fireball, and I started tracking down those experiences, reading case reports. Well, Jim reports his craft as having, I think, a sphere of influence is what he called it. Like, there was a distortion bubble around this whole craft and into the area of the forest. Well, the gentleman that went with him to investigate this craft, his name is John Burroughs. He was actually frozen in this zone, in this sphere of influence. It stopped him, and he does not remember Jim walking around the craft or any of that part of the experience. And that's really what kind of hooked me with it as well, is I experienced that pause, and Mr. Burroughs was stopped, in my opinion. He was completely paused. But like I said, that's kind of been a case that I've followed over the years. And it's strange too, because there's some hoaxing involved. Another player at the base, I call him a player. He's not a player in this scenario anymore. He's one of those people who you find that thread of fraud through his entire life. And for people outside of this case, that's the unbelievable side, if you want to know the truth. Like, people hear his story and they're like, what? That's completely insane. And it's a lie. It's bogus. And he's forever in the bowels of ufology toiletry, in my opinion. But the rest of the experience, Jim Peniston, John Burroughs, the other sighting witnesses, I mean, we're talking about an Air Force base full of people here. There are no names, but there are probably well over 50 witnesses, well over. So back to Mr. Peniston and his sighting. I started social media platforms about a year ago, and I joined a UFO group, a UFO and paranormal group, with the purpose in mind to start talking about this publicly and to meet more experiencers. Well, 3 days after I joined this group, to be a moderator, I opened up the app and it said, Jim Peniston has joined the group. And I was like, I immediately called the maker of this group, and I was like, did Jim Peniston just join our group? He goes, I think so. I was like, is it really him? So I, of course, friend requested Jim Peniston. He's such an amazing, nice man. Completely, I don't know, just so genuine, just a genuine character. I trust that gut feeling and that spidey sense that I have. I can't deny that. But within the next few months, I chit-chatted with him back and forth. Nothing specific to his sighting or his encounter, but I also attended, he calls them briefings because he's a military man. He calls them briefings instead of lectures. And I attended a briefing of his up in Rockford, Illinois. And I went there for Jim Peniston, but what I found was a room full of experiencers. And it was amazing. I've formed some really awesome friendships because of that briefing. And they're continuing to this day. But it's also another odd thing. This is where I venture into the woo a little bit. Like I said, I've kind of surrendered to the woo. I have to figure it out for myself. And Jim Peniston mentioned to me that going to these conferences are great, but they're so big and they're kind of tedious and you don't get to interact with a lot of folks. And he said where it really happens is after the conferences are done and people are at the hotels and they're talking around fires late at night. Well, he mentioned that he had the best chat ever with another researcher named Grant Cameron. And that stuck with me for some reason. It's like, Grant Cameron, okay. Well, within the next few weeks, I had another Grant Cameron kind of ping and another. And I'm like, and this led into Grant Cameron's written a book on music and the phenomena. And so I started paying attention to music, like maybe bands that have been abducted and the songs that they're inspired. And then it's kind of even opened up. There's a group of my friends that it's any song that reminds us of the phenomena. If it speaks to us in a certain way, we're sharing it with each other. Well, just this little music mode has kind of led to synchronicities, but amazingly enough, I am now talking with Grant Cameron and some of his other experiencers that are sharing similar experiences to mine, like with the out-of-body experience and the recurring dreams that I have. And so this, with as much as I want to say the woo is the woo and it's unbelievable, you kind of have to listen and you have to follow. And I don't know, you guys saw this big smile creep up on my face. Like, it truly has been an endless wave of good. Like, the more I embrace this and the more I follow where these synchronicities are leading, because sometimes they're people, sometimes it's a situation, but it's like, it's led me to Grant Cameron, and that's the newest venue I'm going with. He's put me in touch with so many more experiencers outside of ufology. And these synchronicities also led me to Peter Robbins, and he's an amazing friend to have. He's such an excellent researcher, and he has these niches in his research, like working with Bud Hopkins and abductees for so many years. I mean, he's just a plethora of information, but he never pulls out just hard, cold statistics and just throws them at you. I mean, he's an all-encompassing person. And he's interesting as well because he's also linked to Rendlesham Forest. He is the author of the fraudster's story. And this fraudster, I hate saying his name, but I will. His name's Larry Warren. He's like Voldemort to me. He shall never be named again.
That's my uncle.
Oh, terrible. Kick him out of your family.
No, just kidding. Just kidding.
No, I'm teasing. No, and it's a shame. We come across these people inside and outside of ufology. That's just how they get by with their life, is taking advantage of other people's kindnesses and niceness. And to Peter's credit, he researched this man for the better part of a decade and was still able to be duped by this fraudulent person. But as soon as the story unraveled and the pieces weren't fitting anymore. Peter Robbins pulled the book, wrote his publisher, said, you stop this. And he did. And there's not very many people in this field that will backpedal or take away a decade's worth of their research. I feel they're more apt to stand behind their lie and stomp their foot, which is what Larry Warren still continues to do this day. But he's been proven fraudulent in not only lying about his experience, taking a hearsay experience story and making it his own. But I mean, this guy, like, I don't know, he says he's a band promoter, that he worked with John Lennon. He's got photoshopped pictures of like him and every famous person on the planet. I mean, he said he was enlisted in the military for X amount of time, but he washed out after like 18 months, dishonorably, I believe. So, I mean, these are holes that you poke in somebody's character, and they're throughout his entire life. But yet another synchronicity with me and Rendlesham Forest and connecting these dots. And like I said, all these experiences or all these synchronicities are just leading to better things, or at least to happiness. And I'm going to continue to go with it, because why not? It's not often in life that we find inspiring things, like truly inspiring things that make us reevaluate our life. And yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, so few people in their life find something to become passionate about. If you are that one in a million that has a passion in life, something to pursue, something that gets you up in the morning, something that interests you, you are a blessed person. You are a blessed person.
And not only that, but if it wasn't for people trying to track this stuff like yourself, that information wouldn't get out. It would be stuck in with the dog skiing videos and all that. It takes interested people and passionate people to get this information out.
It does. And, I don't think everybody that hears my story, others like mine, I don't think it's going to bring like massive believers into ufology. And it's like, oh, everybody's got it figured out. But I do think it is going to make enough people start to think and open up to the possibilities. Because like I said, all these different contact modalities, I'm going to swing it back into the not special thing again. I don't think that this is just specific to me or other people. I do believe anybody can have this sort of contact. I think it's part of our human nature that maybe we've just forgotten or we don't listen to. And I think this is where I can kick it into some science that helps ground me, other than William Tolan, is the consciousness talk. And like I said, I've experienced some of this, and it led me into this research by his name's Dr. Persinger, and one of his associates is Todd Murphy, and they're neuroscientists. Somewhere in California, I want to say Berkeley, but I could be wrong. And they started studying this feeling in people of a presence being in the room or somebody standing behind you. And they've started, and they have this helmet. Some people call it the Shakti helmet. Other people call it the God helmet. But it's a series of electrodes around your head, and they stimulate areas in your temporal lobe. Well, what they've discovered, and I glaze over a lot of it, is people can have this experience. If they've been raised in Christianity, they'll have a godlike experience. If at the very least, they'll have like a tunneling and a light experience. But these are areas, this is an area everybody has in their brain. Everybody can trigger this. This doesn't have to be the helmet. There's ways, Buddhist monks mantras, repeating this over and over again. This is the same area of the brain that is activated by prayer or meditation. And I find that very interesting. This is something in all of us. The other thing I find that's interesting, and I can't remember his name right now, dang it, but there's also other theories on consciousness itself, that there are levels of consciousness, or maybe even precursor building blocks to consciousness. So you and I know we're both highly evolved, intelligent animals, and we have consciousness. And I think all of us like to look at our pets and know that they love us and that there's some form of consciousness there. But do we look at, maybe botanists do, but do we look at a plant and trees and think they have consciousness? We know they're alive. We know that even some plants chemically communicate with each other. That, and maybe they don't have our level of consciousness. Maybe there is a level of consciousness down to, the single-celled little amoeba thing. Does it have full-blown consciousness? No. Maybe it has the building blocks to consciousness itself. Could be. Rocks, we don't like to think of them as living, but they are part of a living, massive structure. I don't know. There might be building blocks of something in rocks or debris, leftover dead stuff. We don't know. Science is still trying to go there. As long as we're curious enough that they still want to go there. You know what science only goes where people are inspired, It's not just gonna go into the unknown. It's got to be the unknown that excites us. One other thing with science and this, I think the collaboration in the field between ufology and the paranormal is going to be a little bit of exchange of our gadgetry that we have right now, I don't know too many UFO seekers that maybe are even doing CE5 meditation. I don't know if they're bringing in this ghost hunting equipment, like the EMPs where they record voices or text like that. I don't know. I think that's an exciting avenue that people are starting to collaborate with, Why not? I kind of like it. I don't know how the Palladian channeling happens, but could a Ouija board facilitate that? I don't know. I'm willing to. So.
Well, Nicole, wow, you've opened a lot. One thing that I can appreciate about our conversation is not only have you added a lot to my thought life and things that I'm going to pursue after this conversation, but I've been writing down all the names that you have. You've led me to a lot of good books and a lot of people's names that I'm going to research when I leave here, and I really appreciate that. You've given credit to a lot of your research to other people and their books and their websites, and I was writing down names as you were saying them. So that gives me a wealth of resources to find. Also, I just want to give you a time how do people contact you or get into what you're doing? Or do you have any websites or Facebook page or anything?
No website. Anybody can find me on Facebook. Just Nicole Sakach. They can look me up through my personal page. They will see on my personal page that I'm affiliated with William Poland, UFO historian. They can find his blog page where my comments are often present. And you can find our group on Facebook, which is called UFO Real. That's UFO ? Or UFO Real ? A historical review. And those are really the best ways to find us. Our group is very nuts and bolts. We stick to topics and review cases. It is in the sidebar conversations where they go into the woo a little more, which is great. And we do our weekly broadcast every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock Central Standard Time. We give a grounded commentary where we pick topics and we interact with anybody that joins along. And we answer questions and, yeah,
How do you
push ufology.
How do you be a part of that conversation? In other words, do you have a YouTube channel? Is it on Facebook Live, or how do you tune in to hear that conversation?
It's just through Facebook Live. We broadcast, William Poland broadcasts, and I'm in the comments, so anybody can join along in the conversation. After we wrap up, it's usually about an hour-long show, maybe an hour and 10 minutes if we go over. It's a really good night. We do share our commentary with many of our Facebook friend groups that are well beyond just the UFO Real group page. So you can find our commentary in a lot of UFO groups. Thank you to all of our supporters that help us share. Even if you watch after the fact and make a question or a comment, we do have the capability to go back in and reach those comments, and we do comment and keep the conversation going. So
awesome. Well,
that's where you can.
Thank you so much for coming and joining us. Obviously, you're coming in to us from Illinois, so thanks for braving the cold for today and getting on your computer.
It's my pleasure, guys. Thank you so much for having me on.
Awesome. Well,
all right, Nicole Sakach, ladies and gentlemen, reach out to her and learn more about what she's doing with William Poland. And thank you for being a part of this podcast. This is another episode of The Monk and the Mechanic. I'm Kylie the Monk.
And I'm Josh the Mechanic.
And thank you, Nicole.